before we begin. There's some unusual interest in what I'm wearing these days, so I want to make sure everyone knows this is a tie my daughter gave me. My shoes are between the boots and getting back to regular shoes. And apparently caps are now of interest, so I want to make sure I just show from the commissioner I got an NJDOT cap with me. On a serious note, before we jump into a quick post-mortem of our most recent storm, two quick things. I was honored this morning to speak before the Port Authority Board of Commissioners for the first time as governor. I'd spoken before that group, although it was a slightly different group. It's been reconstituted since then, about 17 months ago, about the enormous inequity between airport workers, what they got paid at Newark Liberty versus what they were getting paid at JFK and LaGuardia for the exact same work, just purely for politics. So I was really happy today to go in and testify, give a few comments toward one of the two resolutions that they were discussing today. The first one is that they've got 23 open union contracts, some of which go back double-digit years. I acknowledged, although that wasn't why I was there, I acknowledged that's no way to run the Navy. And I was happy to see that resolution, and hopefully that will come to a good result for all sides. And secondly, the resolution was to finally get on parity with the New York side of the Hudson and the three airports and get toward a unified increased minimum wage over the next several years. Secondly, somewhat relatedly, honestly, I just want to say I was happy to see the progress that we've made in Washington with Gateway funding. It may not be everything that everyone has dreamed of, but it's a major step in the right direction with a long way to go. This project is too important, not just to New Jersey, but to New York, to the Northeast Corridor, I would argue to our national economy and our national security. So this is a very good, important step in the right direction. I want to give a shout out to both of our senators, Menendez and Booker, for their enormous work and effort. A huge one to Congressman Rodney Frelinghuysen as the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, who did extraordinary work, and also across the river, not only to Governor Cuomo, who kept the pressure on, as did I, but in particular to Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. And so to all of the above, and their delegations, by the way, this is broad bipartisan, I think it's unanimous bipartisan support across the Hudson, and it was a good step, a good step in the right direction with a lot more to come. So good afternoon, officially. As much as I love seeing you all and being with you all, I really hope that this is the last time we have to come together like this until next winter. I'm honored to be here with Acting Transportation Commissioner Diane Gutierrez-Scacchetti. Again, Diane, thank you for the hat. Colonel Pat Callahan of the New Jersey State Police, and BPU President Joe Fiordaliso. We've all gotten to know each other very well over the past few weeks. I also want to give a shout out to their teams who have been extraordinary to work with. This has been one wild month. I said this the other day. Someone had said to me, it's not your imagination that March is the new February, and we're living it. First of all, let me say and give my gratitude to all who worked throughout the storm, from the plow drivers and other maintenance teams keeping them out on the roads, to all the local police and fire personnel who responded to accidents and other calls, of course to Colonel Callahan's tremendous team here at New Jersey State Police, to the entire whole of government support that we got. Our goal was to get through this storm safely, and I'm proud, knock on wood, that we did. And in fact, I misspoke. I was relying on some data that turned out not to be true. We had spoken yesterday about a fatality. Thank God it wasn't a fatality. That individual is still with us, although in serious condition, so we should keep that person in our prayers. We still, and Joe could get into this in more detail, we still have many thousands of residents without power throughout the state. Most of these residents are in South Jersey, and in particular in the Atlantic City electric domain. I know that they are working hard to restore power to their, I think it's about 48,000 outages, Joe, impacted customers as soon as possible. And the Board of Public Utilities, led by Joe and his team, is in constant contact with them to make that happen. JCP&L is reporting roughly 20,000, I think, approximately outages, mostly through Monmouth, where I am, and Ocean counties. Again, the BPU is keeping up on these restoration efforts as well. PSE&G, one of whose staging locations I visited and went through in some detail yesterday in Somerset, they have committed 300 crews to Atlantic City Electric to help with their efforts, and JCP&L has committed to doing the same once they restore everyone in their service area. Our hats are off to these crews who went out into the storm to try to repair lines. That's dangerous on a beautiful day like today. That's dangerous work. Never mind the conditions they had to work through yesterday that made their job so much tougher, and we greatly appreciate their efforts. Certainly, we saw the utilities were better prepared for this storm than the previous two, and I greatly appreciate the level of cooperation being shown to get all customers restored. But any multi-day outages are unacceptable, and I'm frustrated when residents call me or our office because they don't feel they're being heard in the corporate offices. We can and we must do better. And I have to say, for those who need them, warming centers will remain open, and you can call 211 or visit nj211.org for the location closest to you. In particular, Joe, you mentioned in Cumberland, in Gloucester counties, where that is particularly needed at the moment. Before we move on to other topics, I think the reality, and Joe could get into this in more detail, I think JCP&L's challenges are in the southern part of their purview, as opposed to 2 weeks ago when it was largely in the northwest, not exclusively. And we already talked about ACE. You had, as I understand it, a lot of ice on power lines, and then that froze, and then heavy snow on top of that. And that sounds like it's been the source of a lot of the outages down there. Secondly, while the numbers are nowhere near, so it's a total right now out of about 72,000. That's nowhere near the numbers we saw for the storm a couple of weeks ago, which peaked, I think, at around 300,000, Joe, if my memory serves me. That's abstract to the family whose house is without power. So as I mentioned a minute ago, we have to all be committed like heck to making sure we get everybody back on. There was more pre-planning, particularly I'd say by JCP&L on this one, where they activated their mutual aid, mutual assistance agreements with other out-of-state utilities. We saw that. We saw evidence at PSE&G when I visited the folks in from Kentucky and Ohio and other states, West Virginia. I think we even had some folks coming out from Canada as well. There was more anticipation, but Joe will talk about this. We're gonna do, led by the BPU, a fulsome postmortem in every respect on how we perform. We want to do as good as we can. We want to look in the mirror and say, how can we be better? Not just how can they be better? And that will come, and that will include the storm that just passed. New Jersey Transit is working on a regular schedule for both bus and rail, and the Access Link resumed at noon today. However, rail service between Atlantic City and Philadelphia remains suspended due to a signal problem, but rail tickets are being accepted as I speak on bus route 554. Our roads are clear, and the commercial truck ban has been lifted as of midnight last night. The state police responded to roughly 300 accidents and an equal number of motorist aid calls yesterday, which is lower than the previous storms, meaningfully lower, significantly lower. I think the colonel will agree. I thank everyone for staying off the roads yesterday to let the plow crews do their jobs. Certainly the commercial truck ban was beneficial to this, and I commend the colonel and his team for their enforcement efforts yesterday. They had to, early on in that ban, ticket, issue summons for commercial vehicles that were ignoring the ban, and they did, and then the word gets around, and you get a lot less of that. And as we said yesterday, as we had also said a couple of weeks ago, this storm kind of, depending on where you were in the state, it coalesced at a little bit later hours. And so when you put a state of emergency in, which we had done 7 p.m. the night before, and a travel ban alongside that, folks wake up and they assume that the roof is going to have fallen in on them right when they wake up. And when they don't see that, they're tempted to say, you know what, it isn't as bad as we thought. We'll get out there, do that errand, do that optional thing that you otherwise wouldn't have done. And we were pleading with people to not do that because we knew the worst of the storm was still in front of us. And to the credit of a lot of people in the state, commercial, residential, private, otherwise, they heeded those warnings. And for that, we are deeply appreciative. And as was reported earlier, I ordered all state offices open at their regular time today. The State Office of Emergency Management, and the Colonel can get into this, will continue to work with all 21 counties throughout the cleanup. So we're up and running rather, and ready to serve where needed. Thankfully, it appears the full fury of this storm did not hit as expected. But we still have a lot of people without power, as I mentioned, and a lot of cleanup still to do. Before you venture out, I would just say to folks who may be watching this, please clear the snow fully from your car before you drive. As this was a heavy snow, it will fly off the roof of a moving vehicle in blocks as opposed to flurries, and that poses a real danger to other drivers or pedestrians. So please take that extra 30 seconds to get all the snow and ice off your vehicle. We're also looking, as you can see here, at some warmer temperatures in the coming days, which obviously will help with the cleaning, but with an expected nighttime refreeze, please be cautious for ice, whether on the roads or on sidewalks. The storm has passed, obviously, but we still have its after effects to get through. Again, I thank everyone for their patience and perseverance through these past few weeks. And in case we need something positive to focus on, we're playing ball, I think, in 1 week, Major League Baseball. So again, thank you. I want to say I think this is my 6th visit to the Traffic Management Center in the past month. And I love coming here. I hope it's not for another storm soon, but I want to turn things over to Acting Commissioner Diane Gutierrez-Scicchetti. Thanks for hosting us, Diane.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Again, big shout out to all the teams, New Jersey DOT, New Jersey Turnpike, South Jersey Transportation Authority, and all the counties and municipalities and their leadership teams. Yesterday was a very smooth day for us in terms of being able to plow. That was in no part not because of the travel ban, but also our partnership with New Jersey State Police. The travel ban was significantly improved our ability to quickly plow snow. And so before you ask, why we used a travel ban this time and not last time, in this particular storm, snow was expected to fall at a much faster rate. The original predictions were up to 4 inches an hour, which really creates whiteout conditions. We had Pennsylvania and New York both instituting significant travel bans, and so what we did, and again with great thanks to both PennDOT Secretary and New York State Secretary of DOTs, they were very cooperative with us, and we worked very closely with them in coordinating these travel bans so that no one was getting negatively impacted over either border. So again, a big shout out to those folks as well. And it was extraordinary coordination, not something that we've done in the past, but worked very well this time. As you know, it was lifted at midnight last night, and if you go out on the Turnpike today, you're going to see truck traffic moving just fine, as in 287 and 78. Folks are really back to normal. You're still going to see some activity on our shoulders. We're pushing them back. We're cleaning up the rest of the snow. But as the governor said, it will continue to melt and then it will continue to refreeze. So again, it's very important for you all to get the message out to folks that they need to be careful as they go out tonight. If they've got activities with their children or appointments, to look for those ice patches, to be careful on sidewalks. We're going to have some warm weather over the next several days, and hopefully we'll see green grass very soon. At the storm height, we had 3,800 pieces of equipment deployed. Our salt and calcium chloride inventories remain in good stead, and I hope they stay exactly where they are until next winter, or at least we'll add to it, but we won't detract from it anymore. Our folks that were sheltered in place at DOT, staying overnight, they've gone home, and we're back to operating normal shifts at DOT, as I believe we are on the Turnpike and South Jersey. Other than that, again, we've had tremendous support from Colonel Callahan, from the governor, from our neighboring states, and honestly, that's how you fight a storm. It did start a little bit later, but if you look around, you still have the significant snow that was originally called for by the Weather Service. So, and we appreciate all you did to help us get the message out on the travel ban, because that is one thing I noticed. There was a lot of coverage of that, and I think that was essential to its success. So we thank all of you as well. Thanks, Diane. Sure.
A couple of quick comments before I ask the Colonel to come up. The travel ban is something that we were just discussing this, doing our own postmortem, is something we're going to look at really carefully. And I'd like folks, I think, Diane, you'd agree with me, we'd like folks to remember that it was for certain types of vehicles, and particularly we were focused on tractor trailers. And secondly, it was only on certain interstates. So it was on 78, 80, 280, and 287.
Correct.
Which meant, and what do they have in common? They have elevation, they have hills. And that's where, that's where you see typical jackknife or other issues like that. Diane and her team, in coordination with the state police, deliberately left 295, 195, and the Turnpike and 95 out of that so that commercial traffic could find its way still through New Jersey. And I think the other point there is that it was so extraordinarily coordinated with Pennsylvania and New York, because if you've got one of our three states going left and the other two going right, you have some displacements that could cause a lot of chaos. Second comment I wanted to make before I ask the Colonel to say a few words. I was asked on a call yesterday, I forget by who, with the press, what's my biggest surprise? And in addition to the competence of the teams, and the competence is as good as any I've ever seen in any walk of my life, it's the coordination. And so we're in a building which exemplifies that. The Transportation Management Center is one of the nerve centers behind us, where you've got not just DOT, but you've got state police, and you've got other government agencies, BPU and other representatives there looking at an entire evolving map of cameras, maps literally, broadcasts of the state. You see the same thing at the Rock in West Trenton, which is, in that case, here we're hosted by DOT, there we're hosted by the state police, which is a state-of-the-art nerve center, multidiscipline. You could go around in their equivalent of their bullpen and see health and BPU and whatever it might be, and their human services all represented. And I would say, lastly, I had the honor of visiting up at the Northern Division up at Newark yesterday, and you got on the first floor DOT and the second floor state police. And in each floor, they said it was essential, indispensable that they were in the same location, and the coordination they had led to better results no matter how good each department or each entity was. So I want to give that shout out. That notion of closely coordinating is a real weapon at our disposal. With that, I'm honored to bring up Colonel Pat Callahan.
Thanks, Governor.
Colonel.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just take a minute to echo both the governor's remarks as well as the commissioner's remarks with regards to the impact of the travel ban. Compared to the last nor'easter, we had about a 40% reduction in motor vehicle accidents, a 63% reduction in motorist aids. So overall, those contacts with motorists, either through a motorist aid or a motor vehicle accident, was reduced by 55%. And if you want to know the truth, you ask a road trooper about what they thought about it, and the feedback from those troopers up in North Jersey last night was that it was phenomenal because it allowed them to do their job in a safe fashion. So again, moving forward, I would anticipate that we look real hard and close at that assessment and decision to do a travel ban. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to be up at the State Emergency Operations Center. As the governor said, it is a lot of moving parts, but that battle rhythm that we get into is something to watch, and it's something to be a part of that I'm very honored and humbled to be a part of it. But as the State Director of Emergency Management, I took the opportunity to get on the phone yesterday with all 21 county OEM coordinators and get real-time feedback from them and any issues or unmet needs that they were having. That was soon followed up by a phone call with FEMA Region 2 with regards to any needs that the state might have, municipalities, counties, or at the state level. And as the commissioner indicated, that phone call and collaboration with PennDOT and New York DOT was one that they commented on the phone that they had not. One had been involved with emergency management and DOT for over 20 years and had never seen such collaboration and coordination. So it's events like yesterday that help foster those relationships and get us into that battle rhythm, which ultimately leads us to protecting the citizens that not only live in the state but that are trying to get through it safely. So that's all I have. Thanks, Governor.
Thanks, Colonel. Appreciate that. I think the busiest man, as I say, the busiest man in show business, the busiest guy maybe in our government over the past number of weeks has been President Joe Fiordaliso, the BPU, with the horrific outages we had a couple of weeks ago, and then in several storms, and the challenges that we have with the storm yesterday and still have with many outages. I want to thank Joe for his leadership and his team, and would love to ask him to come on up and say a few words. Joe?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you very much, and thank you for your support. And if not for your work, Colonel, and your work, Commissioner, all of those out-of-state crews wouldn't have been able to get here. So thank you very much. And it is truly a team effort. And with that in mind, Governor, I just have one request of you.
Please.
We need a gubernatorial proclamation which will prohibit any further snowstorms this year.
Done.
Okay, so we're all right. Okay, we're good then. It's very important, and the governor alluded to this, the coordination, because it takes a team effort. I mean, there's no question about it. And after the first major storm, with that amount of snow that we got, we really had a very much of a heart-to-heart talk with our utilities, and we are, as the governor indicated, in the process of investigating exactly what went wrong, what went right, where we can improve, and where they can improve. Because again, it's a team effort, and as I always tell the utilities, we're serving the same constituency, the 9 million New Jerseyans who count on us every single day. And knowing that, they have to communicate with one another. And I'm happy to report they did this time. They have to get out and have mutual assistance requests immediately out there, which they did this time. They have to be willing to help intrastate utilities before sending any utility or any of their crews out of state, which they did this time. And I'm also happy to report that Atlantic City Electric is under the umbrella of Exelon. There are 650 Exelon assets currently in the ACE territory to help restore their customers. ACE and the southern part of JCP&L expect to restore 95% of those without power by midnight tonight. The remaining by midnight tomorrow night. So our hope is that everyone who lost power because of this storm will be restored by tomorrow night, the latest. As the governor indicated, we have approximately 72,000, and that number is constantly changing. So it may be less today or less this moment because they're constantly getting people back online. So I wanted to thank them, the utilities, and the investigation is going to continue. The investigation is going to wrap in this storm. The investigation is going to focus on many, many areas. But the two areas that I'm primarily concerned with is vegetation management and the fact we really want to look at underground lines as part of our investigation. The vegetation management has to be aggressive, and we have to be smart in how we plan it. So that's going to be all part of our investigation. That investigation has been initiated and continues as we speak, and we're hoping to have a report sooner than later. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of you for your help and support during this time. Thank you, Governor.
I have to pick up my hat in case anyone wants to ask.
Oh, did I drop it? I'm sorry.
No problem. May I say something that I've said several times, and then we'll throw open to questions about the utilities. Regardless of what we may think about corporate performance, let's never cross the wire between that assessment and the bravery and the respect we have for the linemen and women. Most of them are from New Jersey, but as Joe mentioned, both ACE and JCP&L, in fact, in PSE as well, because I met them there, they all had waved in folks from out of state, in some cases from out of country. So to all of them, we want to show our gratitude and thanks. With that, I think we'll throw over for a couple of questions. Is that okay, Danny? Anybody?
Just making sure, the person who definitely spoke to that yesterday, the person's still in critical, serious condition, or was that just a miscommunication type thing?
Yeah, I think we all got information that we read as though it was a fatality. So none of us were we weren't freelancing on that one. And I think without getting into the specifics, there is an individual who is still in tough ICU. So we should keep that person in our prayers. Sure. In New Jersey? It's funny, the light, just want to say one thing, it's sunny and there's snow on the ground, so I can barely see you folks there. I believe there are people there, but... Well, it's a little, I mean, the ink is barely dry. I think one of you guys were asking me about this yesterday, Ryan was actually, and I said literally at that point the ink wasn't dry. It's barely dry here, but it's a big step in the right direction. But it's one big step with a lot more that we need to come. So we need the federal government to be a full partner in this project. But this is a big step in the right direction. This is, you know, I guess in parlance, a down payment. It's going to be able to fund a lot of the early stage elements of this project. We're still honestly parsing through exactly what's in there. Some of it's very specific to it. Some of it's more general. And so we're parsing through it. Again, I want to thank the congressional leadership, Rodney Frelinghuysen at the top of the list, our great senators, Senator Schumer, and a bipartisan. This was not, you know, the great thing about this, but for the curveballs the president had been throwing in the past couple of weeks, this was never partisan. Didn't have literally one conversation with anybody in New Jersey or New York who didn't think this was essential. And so it's a terrific step in the right direction, but it's one step. It's a big step, but we need a lot more.
So you know Joe Biden, did he take Trump in a fight? And they're talking about it, so.
Physical. Brett, you know, you prepare for a lot of questions. I just don't have a quick answer for that one.
When the president tweets about it, it's fair game.
Has he really?
He tweeted this morning that
About Joe Biden?
That Biden should stop talking, that I'll take him.
Count me with Biden. I'm a huge Biden fan. I get Biden, and the odds are in my favor, I think, on that one. Want to again thank you also for your patience. We had wanted to do something live yesterday, but there were too many moving parts and we were in too many different places. And I appreciate everyone in the press bearing with us that we didn't do that because we had to do the jobs we did. But I was glad we were able to get on the phone. But thanks for all for coming out for today, and thank you for hosting us so graciously.
Absolutely, Governor. Thank you.
I think I'm going to use upstairs for something else.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anyone interested in B-roll of the bullpen, Walter Green, Tom Keating, Turnpike Authority,
By the way, this is worth seeing if you have